And they said, "Oh my goodness, it hasn't changed." A lot of people have said, haven't they?
Yes.
And it's just been a wonderful experience. It's been really a wonderful experience.
There's something similar about this house with some of the other houses
Yes.
down through here. Tell me a little bit about that.
There were 4 of these houses, railroad section houses, and the section hands lived here. And of course, when the railroad tracks were being extended to Eastland and Ravenscroft, they built these houses to house the section hands so that they could take care of any problems. And I think live here while the train track was being laid. It took them about 2 years, maybe it was a year, to get the track all the way out to Eastland. But this house was designed for 2 families. It had 2 front doors, so we feel like one family lived on this side and one on the other. We're not sure if they shared a kitchen or if there were 2 kitchens, but it was designed for 2 families. It was around 1902, somewhere in there, 1900, 1902, 1904, that these were established and the track was being laid, because the Ravenscroft and Eastland mines opened up around that time. So it took about 2 years to get the tracks laid, the mines sunk and all that, and so it's 1900 to 1904 in that frame time for the mines and the railroad section houses. But there's a real unique story about a little grave that's out back, and the child was the baby of a railroad section hand that lived here, and their family was from Doyle actually, but the child died here, and they were living here at the house, and they wanted to bury him in Doyle, but the railroad would not let him be transported because he probably died of smallpox, and so they wouldn't let him go. So he's buried in the backyard. And that's kind of a sad story. There's lots of sad stories connected with all of the towns and all the things, but that's one of the stories. So,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I just was going to add that I had so many people say to me, "Tear it down. It's an eyesore. You could use the land and make it better and make the building over there better." And I said, "How could you tear this down? This is so." Oh, it's just so overwhelming, so historical. And I said, no, it needs to be what it is, you know. So.
And it's just amazing, because if it had been left many more years, it would have not been torn down. It would have fallen in, because the roof was collapsing and the foundation was bad, and so, you know, with just a little work, it did a lot. It came together a lot easier than they thought. And this house has never been renovated. It's the only one that's been left to its natural state. And there's actually another house like it out in Clifty, and we were able to go there, and the owners let us get some parts off of it. So all the woodwork and the windows and everything are pretty much time. Yes, yes.
That is awesome. Now you guys have collaged not only the enormous amount of pictures, but also you have put together resources where people can find out more information about that time period. Explain some of the stuff that you offer here at the museum, such as that.
This is a little free publication that we give out. When we first got started, it was through the Volunteer Electric, so they put out a little story about it in the power lines, and we go back to this all the time just to get our base and to know how we got started. So it gives the facts of how everything got going, and we give this away here. The book that we used, we were given the rights to publish Mining on the Mountain, and this was actually a thesis done by Betty Hulls. And when the teachers started working on our lesson plans, this is what we used. We tore this book apart, and we came up with lessons, social studies, home economics, art. We did all kinds of things from this, but this gave us our basis, and it was just a real help. Then after we got started, everybody said, well, we want pictures, because we had a slideshow, the old slideshow. We had it, and a lot of people said, we want those pictures. So we put together a pictorial book, and this has a lot of the pictures of the slideshow in it. And we were just really thankful that we were able to do that. So that's another book that we have for sale. Then we came across a find after we were doing our reunions. I'm not sure what year, but this is called the Bon Air Hustler, and it was it's compiled of a lot of newspapers between 1917 and 1920 of the different coal mining communities, but Eastland, Bon Air, and Ravenscroft are also in here, and it's just great because it's got the old news, like so-and-so went to visit so-and-so, and when they did that here, they had to travel from train. So if they visited so-and-so from Eastland and they went to Bon Air, they usually spent the night and came back the next day. So it tells all those little stories when someone got hurt, when someone died, when somebody had a baby, or the flu epidemic. So it's just a really great find that we had, and we sell it here at the museum. Then we have a lady friend or member of our society that actually put this together, and she has the Sparta magazine, and she prints anything we want just about in the magazine, but she came up with this as a fundraiser for us, and we have these for sale, and it concentrates mostly on the Bonaire community, but it has a lot of the history in it. And then we have our newsletter. This is our last newsletter for this past month, and our members get this free, and we send it to them, and you can pick them up here also, but we try to get our newsletter out three times a year. Quarterly, and so our members get this, like I said, plus our 2 tours free. And then here at the museum we have a brochure that tells the history of the museum and some membership fees and our website and everything. So
how do you guys fund this? How do you keep this going?
Well, when we started doing our tours, we didn't have much money. We started out with that $500 grant, and that's how we got started. And then every year at our reunion, we sell pictures. We started selling T-shirts. On our tours, we take a collection. We don't charge for our tours, but people give money for that. Our membership now is generating money, and we don't really have big fundraisers. We do have our meal. We started doing a meal at our reunion at our history fair every year, so that generates some money. We're just doing the best we can, basically.
And you guys open up the museum part free?
Yes, this is free. I mean, we have a donation jar that people come in and maybe put some money in, but right now during the winter months we're open just on Saturdays, but during the most of the year we're open Fridays and Saturdays. So yeah, awesome. Volunteer basis, and we always could use some more volunteers. Some
contact information if someone's watching would like to maybe find out more information when you guys is open and if you will be open, how can they get a hold of it?
Well, we have an email, Bonaire Mountain, Bonaire MTTNHS, Bonaire Mountain Historical Society, benlomond.net. We're also on Facebook, Bonaire Mountain Historical Society on Facebook, and we are working on a website. We're just now getting that going, but it's at http://BonaireMountainHistoricalSociety.com. So just keep looking on there, and we're coming up with more news on that one. Okay, the railroad, this part of the museum highlights the railroads, and of course it was detrimental, the coal mining was detrimental to that. That was one of the things that Dibble said when he started this mining operation. He said, I've got the mines, but he said, I have no way to get the coal out. So he was also superintendent of the railroad, and he was able to get a spur from Sparta to Bonaire Mountain. So this wall features a lot of our railroads. There's the Rock House section hand crew, and we had section houses at Rock House also. This is a sign that was given to us. It was on the Ravenscroft check office, and it just states that unless you're willing to be careful and you're not going to try to get hurt, then don't even ask for employment, because our mines were very safe. I think we only had like 6 people that were killed in our mines on the whole time that it was, but that's the original sign. Our museum has, of course, fireplaces on each side, because like I said, this side was for one family, and this mantle came out of Dr. Clark's house. Every community had their doctors, and Dr. Clark lived out in Eastland. This was his house out in Eastland, and this mantle was donated to us from that house. And so the fireplaces, of course, were probably coal burning. And
now, is this some of the coal from the...
It actually is. This is coal from Bonaire. We went down there, and the guy that owns part of the land down there, he went into the mine down there and actually got this coal for us. Here, I want to just show you the books that Doris Welch has put together, these books, and there's a book on every community that shows history, but it also shows family trees, and it's just a really good thing. If you have any family history in the mines whatsoever, then you need to come and look. We also have, like, they didn't have annuals back then, but we have a lot of school pictures from the children. This picture on this wall, I think we've got another picture of Dr. May, but the doctor, this was a medical association in Bonaire in 1928, and these were all the doctors that came to the medical association meeting. And I don't know if you can see the old school bus in the back, but a lot of the doctors from the mountain mining towns were in that picture. And I'll show you a picture. We'll talk about Dr. May a little bit too, because she's part of the history on Bonaire Mountain.
Now, the setting that you set this, about what time frame is this, some of the older stuff set at?
Well, we tried to do it around the early 1900s. And of course, some of this is on loan, some of it was given to us, donated to us, but I think the ladies that put this together did a great job. Of course, there's not a lot of pictures and everything in here, but there is a picture over here, a story about this Lockwood lady. She has her horse and her wagon, and she carried milk and eggs and butter and I think beef and everything all over the community. And she had her wagon there. She was like a rolling store, I guess. But they said she would be so tired by the end of the day that she'd fall asleep and her horse would take her home, and when it would stop and it would jolt her to wake, and that's how she knew she was awake.
Hey, I've heard of men peddlers, but I had never heard of a woman peddler.
She sure did, Miss Lockwood.
My great-grandma.
James's great-grandma, I didn't realize that. And then here we have, this is our latest donation, and it's the medicine cabinet. And one of our doctors, Dr. Breeding, it belonged to him. And Dr. May Wharton, she's actually the Wharton out up in Pleasant Hill was named after her. And she was a lady doctor back then that rode her mule all over the mountain. And she still actually has a clinic that's still standing. It's not going to stand much longer, but a clinic that she used out in Eastland, Clifton area is still standing. And there's a book about her, Doctor Woman of the Upper Cumberlands. And they have that up at the museum up at Pleasant Hill. But that's where she's basically from, that area.